and there are new questions over the UK's Afghan resettlement scheme following that major data breach by the Ministry of Defence.
Yeah, going on, isn't it? It follows reports in The Telegraph that one migrant has brought over more than 20 relatives, including some who have been previously refused asylum.
Meanwhile, the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, is accusing the government of pushing Britain into a doom loop of rising taxes, with families being asked to pay more for less.
Sticking with the economy, there's fresh speculation that Rachel Reeves is prepared to freeze fuel duty again this autumn in what's being described as a key part of Labour's cost of living fight back.
Let's talk to political strategist Peter Barnes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right, let's
morning.
start with this Afghan situation because
the gift that keeps on giving.
It really does.
Except, the problem.
It's not really a gift. If
the problem with this is there are also reports on the back of this. As worrying as all this is, there are also reports that at least 3 Afghans who've been linked to the UK have been killed by the Taliban.
Yes.
So we have some sense of responsibility.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. But one thing I will say very early on in this, there is no way a government should ever be able to use the courts and a super injunction to keep information from the public or a select committee or anything like that. That stinks to high heaven. And it concerns me that this might not be the only one. And they covered up £7 billion worth of money. What else have they covered up? That's my concern, and that I think we need legislation to stop it in the future. But what's interesting on this one is, whilst we struggled to define a woman, we couldn't define a family either, because it seems to be everybody you've just run into in co-op. It's absolutely ridiculous.
There's no legal definition.
No, it's again, I think this is what we started to term the tyranny of the vague. In other words, we all say the word, but we all mean very different things by it. So that's allowed the government, and particularly the courts, with the use of the ECHR, to kind of expand this out as far as they like. So it's why you get the chicken nuggets situation, with reasons and rights to family life. It doesn't really mean anything. But, yeah, I have to admit, the fact that some of these people have been denied entry before, it's just one mistake after another, compounded and then doubled down on, because, it seems, like you said, we seem to have left about 75,000 people in Afghanistan who were the ones who actually helped us and the ones who actually were involved in the armed forces and, our efforts there. And they've seemed to have, like you said, we've got these kind of what seems described as murder squads. That one, they lured a 61-year-old grandfather down an alleyway and they shot him 3 times. It is brutal what is happening, and yet the government seems to be more interested in trying to save their own careers and reputations than actually trying to fix any of this. Because Grant Chaps, who disappeared for 3 days, conveniently with his lawyers, that's, I think, couldn't find him. Where's his lawyer? They're never too far apart. But then, I get why Ben Wallace would have brought this in, because there was the data breach, which is a story in itself, one of the biggest ones we've ever seen. That's something else. And also, the person who leaked it is still working at the MOD. How is that a thing?
Yeah.
Why does nobody get fired in this country? What do you actually have to do? Well, it's just ridiculous.
You normally get promoted.
Well, that's true, yeah. What does they always say? Deputy heads will roll.
Yeah.
I think this was the intern rather than anything else. But, it's just, yet again, it is Britain looking like a laughingstock because we can't get our own house in order.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
It is worrying, though, as Stephen's just said, about the people that are left behind there. The two papers today, the Telegraph on one hand saying, oh, my God, they're bringing 20 relatives in each. Meanwhile, the Mail is saying revenge of the Taliban. And, that you know, in the week that we've learnt this information, 3 people have already been killed. So the two sides of this story, the people we should feel terribly sorry for. And yet, on the other hand, there are people coming in that, you know, should they be coming in?
Oh, yeah.
Many of them have criminal records.
Most we don't actually even know anything about. They've just been kind of hopped on the plane as it's been taking off.
Well,
there were stories of taxis actually driving up to the planes, running out as it was taking off and get on.
There's one line in the Telegraph today, a bloke whose job was to serve tea is in Britain with his family, but the deputy commander of the same Air Force base, actually literally there on the ground in the uniform, is still there in hiding in Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's preposterous, but it seems to be that the government didn't get round to doing this because they had this information for 3 years, sat on it, lost it for a year, didn't realise they lost it, found it on Facebook, of all places. This story just gets more bizarre and more just preposterous, but then you realise it's the British government and incompetence, so therefore anything is possible. And like you said, the wrong people are here and the right people seem to be left in Afghanistan, and there is nothing we can do to help them because of our relations with the with the Taliban, obviously, are null and void at the minute. And, I think Germany has just signed an agreement with the Taliban to be able to send people back. How they're getting around that and the ECHR and Rwanda, there's a lot of questions in that. I don't know. Yes. That's going to be an interesting one.
Talking about things which are confusing, what's happening back here at home, we've got Kemi Badenoch saying we're in a doom loop of taxes, whilst ahead of the autumn budget, which we know is going to be obviously a lot of tax rises, the Chancellor seems to be saying fuel duty will be frozen again. Yeah. I mean, fuel duty is a pain to everybody, but at a time when we need to raise money, why is she suddenly announcing that's being frozen?
Because she's a coward. Because she's saying she's making all the big, strong decisions. She's not. This is it's about 850 quid per household, £24 billion we leave sat untouched, and other taxes rise higher because we don't touch this one. If you really wanted to tackle the impending economic crisis that will make 2008 look like child's play, you scrap the triple lock, you scrap fuel duty, and you start going and you tidy up the pensions and raise the retirement age. No political party is going to do that because it's electoral suicide. So we are stuck in a doom loop. But it's interesting Kemi's bringing this up because it's been part of the kind of slow repositioning of the Conservatives' new line, which is fiscal responsibility. That seems to be where she's heading with this, because obviously you've got the Labour Party printing money and spending it and giving it to the trade unions and no idea what they're doing. But you've then also got Reform seem to be playing this kind of populist, we're going to give it to welfare, but we're going to scrap net zero, but then we're going to renationalise some things. They're all over the place on fiscal credibility, which doesn't poll well with the working class communities. So Kemi seems to be sticking on to this because she's also talking about small business reform, VAT reform, corporate tax reform, actual things that we need to make the country more business attractive after this government goes, and we actually need to get businesses back up and running. It's not a bad idea. The problem is the Conservative brand is still incredibly toxic. Let's not forget, debt to GDP was 96%, when Rishi left office. That is astronomical. And, so they're running on something that is right, but they don't really have the credibility to run on it. So we'll have to see whether it works. Hopefully it is the right thing to do, but I just think she might be the wrong messenger.
With the Express story, as a former newspaper journalist, with the Express story, that is just, it's a bit of a non-story. It's like, anybody could have said that, and Kemi is doing exactly what every political party does when they're in opposition, is pointing out where the party in charge are going wrong. That's
but to be fair to Kemi, though, she is actually giving policies which are financially backed, they are credible. She's got the IFS is on board with some of it. She's actually coming to the table with credibility, which is actually where I think Kemi's got this right, because everybody's shouting at each other. Nobody's got anything to stand on. There's no receipts, as they say. Kemi's coming to the table with the game. And, you know, I actually think when push comes to shove at a general election, or as we get further into this term and the government continues to collapse, she's going to look, or at least the Conservatives, whether she's still there, I don't know, she's going to look like the sensible one. The Conservatives might be the only one credible there. Because, you know, Ed Davey's doing somersaults somewhere, so...
Yeah, she does seem quite calm.
It'll be interesting to see, because I say we need some proper economic strategy from somebody. All right, Peter, thanks very much indeed.
See you next hour.
Yep.
Thank you, Peter.